Okay. Okay, so there's none. Can we now proceed? Okay, thank you very much for answering the Mentimeter questions. We now more or less know the profile of our participants in the room. And again, welcome. We are now going to start the presentations, and allow me a couple of minutes to introduce our first speaker for who will make the presentation. So our first speaker is Ms. Antoinette Anaban. And Ms. Anaban is the Assistant City Planning and Development Coordinator and the Officer in charge of the City Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office of the City Government of Baguio. She is an economist by profession and an environmental planner, where she spent 15 years of her professional life at the National Economic and Development Authority at the Cordillera Administrative Region, before joining the City Government of Baguio as Assistant City Planning and Development Coordinator. And later on, as the designated officer in charge of the CDRRMO office, or the Disaster Risk Reduction Management Office. Ms. Anaban is also the city government's focal person for the Flood Early Warning System Mitigation and Information System project funded by the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund, which is the subject of her presentation this afternoon. Ms. Tonette, please.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone who are attending this event. May I ask somebody to assist me? Okay. So let me start with my presentation through a short profile of my city. Next, please. Baguio City prides itself as the summer capital of the Philippines due to its cool climate. It is nestled atop the Grand Cordillera mountain ranges, which is 1,600 meters above sea level. Baguio is originally designed for 25,000 to 30,000 people. However, with rapid urbanization, its population has grown more than 10 times than originally designed. This rapid urbanization are attributed to the major functional roles of the city, such as the major tourist destination, the prime education center of North Philippines, the Center for Socioeconomic Activities, and the seat of the regional government, among others. Next, please. Unexpectedly, Baguio is one of the cities in the entire Philippines that experience the highest amount of rainfall, causing the occurrence of flooding mainly in low-lying areas, which are subjected to a number of flood events in the past several years. By being exposed and having a high vulnerability to climate hazards, combined with the expansion of impervious paved areas within the city and its surroundings, Baguio is experiencing increasing runoff volumes and flood damages. All these impacts are expected to be compounded by climate change, which will very likely cause an increase in the frequency and intensity of rainfall events and further exacerbate flooding events and rain-induced landslides. Next, please. Aligned with the Smart City direction of Baguio, the following are among our initiatives. First, the Smart City Command Center, which facilitates timely response to emergencies through its 911 emergency platform, and also serve as the Smart City Hub that integrates all the digital data and systems of the city, including the ongoing project on the Flood Early Warning System. Second is the continuous improvement of our internal processes using digital innovations for a speedy delivery of government services and as a way of coping up with the new normal condition. Third is the ongoing smart city twinning with the city of Perth, Australia, which is also funded under the AASCTF. We are also looking forward to the establishment of a national government data center to accelerate government digital transformation and the build-up of human capital through the digital transformation hub. Finally, the Baguio City Smart Flood Early Warning Information and Mitigation System project, which is the core of my presentation. Next, please. The AB approved the establishment of the ASEAN Australia Smart Cities Trust Fund with financing provided by the Government of Australia through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. It is through this mechanism that the Trust Fund is supporting Baguio City in implementing the Smart Flood Early Warning Information and Mitigation System project. The project is assisting the city with both the planning for flood mitigation and the delivery of the services of flood early warning and responses using smart technologies. The end goal of this project is to improve the city's resilience to flooding and facilitate early preparedness. The value added is an increase in reaction lead time by way of forecasting future water levels in the main streams and the risk of floods in the city. Next, please. At the center of the project is the flood early warning system, which is the key output of this project. At the same time, we are looking on ensuring that the LGU has the capacity to operate the flood early warning system to ensure that this system will be running for many years and that it is sustainable in the long term as well. The project is also focusing on climate change adaptation and flood mitigation. We also want to ensure that the system that will be established in Baguio can be replicated in other areas outside Baguio that are being challenged by flooding. And of course, all of this is driven by smart technologies and data. So we need to ensure that the system is built on the best available data so that we can continuously optimize the system moving forward. Next, please. The project has three outputs, which start with the flood early warning system, which is an online system that will be running in real time to help predict where flooding events will be occurring in the city. The project is also establishing a real-time data capture system in all 4 rivers in Baguio through the water level monitoring system that will be installed in each river. The last output of the project focuses on the nature-based flood mitigation solutions for the city through a flood mitigation action plan. Next. One of the aspects of this project is to prepare flood solutions that can help bring back the natural beauty of the city through these nature-based solutions for flood mitigation. This is the visual representation of how flood early warning system is designed and what it can do. Again, this system is data-driven. So we establish a number of data points in order to run this flood warning system. We need data on rainfall, which will help the project team understand how the rainfall has been historically. We also need the rainfall data in real time coming from the water level monitoring stations. And finally, we need the water level data for our rivers. All these are fed into the system for the calibration of the models to ensure that the system accurately predicts flooding and sends out of warnings of the impending flooding, giving the citizens ample time to prepare and respond to the flood warning. Next, please. One of the key focus of this project, next slide, please. One of the key focus of this project is that the LGU needs to be able to run this system ourselves. To this end, the project has designed an on-the-job training for key people identified by the Baguio LGU who could run this system and that the system is sustainable in the long term. Next slide, please. One thing that the project is also focusing is on understanding how climate change and flooding will impact Baguio. The reality is that climate change is likely to increase flooding in the future. So the extreme monsoon events that we see today are likely to become more extreme in the future. So need to ensure that the city will be able to respond to these events as well. And for this, the project team has been testing the models with rainfall events predicted for the future. So we can also map out how flooding is expected to look in the future in Baguio. Next, please. Next slide. Another thing that the project is focusing on is inclusion. As one of the aims of the flood early warning system is to ensure that appropriate, applicable, and timely early warning reaches the last mile. We need to make sure that we include the people who will be affected by flooding. And so part of the work being done under this project addresses the need and interest of the city to implement gender transformative approaches to flood early warning systems to ensure all its citizens can benefit from this development. Next, please. The project has its share of challenges, especially due to the continuing COVID-19 pandemic. Because of changing movement restrictions in the country, some delays in the delivery of certain outputs were inevitable. So the project team shifted to largely virtual and digital means of stakeholder engagement, city consultations, and pilot project implementations. Another challenge is the lack of digital data, particularly for the urban drainage system in Baguio, which showed significant gaps that impacted the approach to the project's flood mitigation action plan. It was also challenging to map out and coordinate with the different stakeholders in charge of maintaining various data sources or infrastructure. Next, please. Despite these challenges, a silver lining that the current pandemic has highlighted is the value of digital solutions in ensuring the continuation of essential urban services and the delivery of time-sensitive information to the public amidst restricted movement and physical contact. The strong political will and commitment is also a big factor. Otherwise, it would be more difficult to advance the development of smart digital solutions in the city. The engagement of various city stakeholders during certain stages of the project is also important to ensure that we are getting the necessary feedback on their issues and concerns for integration in the project. The city has also received very strong support from the project's technical team led by Rumble, a Danish engineering and consulting firm, who despite not being able to physically travel to the city, last year have been assisting us in the implementation of this project. Next, please. In the implementation of the project, we gained insights which include, among others, the critical role of the local government in supporting and committing to get the project done, the importance of having a centralized repository of updated planning data that every department can readily access. All local development processes from planning to implementation should be inclusive to ensure that the needs of the citizens, especially the vulnerable and marginalized sector, are properly addressed, and continuous digital innovation to improve the delivery of government services to intended beneficiaries. Next, please. A lot of work has already been done under this project, and you can learn more about the different components of this project in a more in-depth manner by downloading these various reports by scanning the QR code on screen. You should also see some links on the Zoom chat, which direct links to these reports. Baguio City, next please. Baguio City is very fortunate to be part of this pilot project, so we would like to thank the Government of Australia, through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and Asian Development Bank, and Rumble for the strong support that they are currently providing to the city. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Antoinette. It's like we're running after time, huh? So many things to say, but so short a time given. But anyway, we will be giving you additional time later on to further emphasize some points that you would like to share to the participants. But yeah, for now, allow me to introduce our second speaker. Our second speaker is Alison Snaydon. Alison is a disaster risk reduction and resilience specialist at the Practical Action Consulting. Her work focuses on early warning and climate information systems and forecast-based early action with a strong cross-cutting gender and social inclusion lens, exploring how how disaster risk reduction can most effectively meet differential needs driven by inequality and can transform these inequalities. Alison recorded her presentation as she is not available to attend today's session.
Hi everyone, my name is Alison Snaydon. I'm a disaster risk reduction advisor at Practical Action Consulting, and we had the opportunity last year to collaborate on this exciting project to develop flood early warning in Baguio City. Our role was to bring a gender and social inclusion perspective to the system to ensure that the flood early warnings are equally effective for everyone who needs them. Today, I'm going to talk through a bit of background information about why gender and social inclusion matter for early warning, and then give you a quick overview of the study we conducted, the recommendations we developed, and how those are being taken forward. So firstly, why is gender and social inclusion important for an early warning system? Social and gender inequalities tend to increase the vulnerability of specific populations by pushing them to the margins, obstructing their access to power and material resources, and stigmatizing behaviours or characteristics. These vulnerabilities, and especially intersecting vulnerabilities, are often invisible in data and therefore in disaster risk management and reduction policy and practice. When policy and practice don't account for social inequalities, the impacts of floods reinforce and worsen existing inequalities, as already vulnerable people are left further and further back. As part of the aim of the Smart Cities programme to strengthen the resilience of Baguio City to floods, we conducted a mixed method study to identify how gender affected residents' experiences of flooding and what they need from a flood early warning system. Our study mainly focused on vulnerability and impact, risk knowledge, monitoring and warning, communication and dissemination, and evacuation, and I'll go through some of the key findings in each of these areas. In terms of vulnerability and impact, we found that the current system is very reliant on informal social connections. So this indicates the importance of community relationships, but it also means that people who aren't connected will be more vulnerable. So for people who are perhaps new to the area, which is a key factor given the growth of Baguio City, as well as people who might be isolated, disconnected, or distrustful of local authorities, there are gaps in how well that system meets their needs. We also found that caring responsibilities were a key driver of vulnerability, particularly in relation to single parents. When we looked at risk knowledge, we found a lot of knowledge gaps at individual level that led to risky late evacuation. A lot of people we spoke to said that previous experience of flooding was really influential for them in terms of how they responded to a warning. If they had experienced severe flooding before, they were more likely to evacuate promptly, but if they hadn't, they were more likely to underestimate the risk. This reflects findings from our other research that marginalised populations in this region often have lower levels of risk knowledge. This can be due to gaps in access to education, areas of public life where information is shared, or gaps in access to information and communications technology. And it can lead to an underestimation of the likelihood of a hazard event occurring or being very severe. In terms of monitoring and warning, people shared a range of different needs and preferences. Women were slightly more likely than men to prefer a longer lead time, which is consistent with what we found elsewhere. Marginalised people are likely to be affected earlier and more severely by floods, and they're likely to need earlier warning based on lower thresholds than the wider community. When examining communication and dissemination of warnings, we found that current warnings are not reaching everyone. A lot of people we spoke with first knew about the flooding when they could see the water. We found that there are strong preferences as well for very detailed information about where and when a flood will occur and how severe it will be. We also found a key tension between the importance of in-person warnings that are communicated by barangay officials, which are highly trusted by residents, and the need to provide warnings at multiple stages and lead times to meet different needs for people in the community. Evacuation is of course a really key area, as one of the key goals of any early warning system is to ensure that people are able to reach safety. Respondents in our survey noted a number of different challenges to evacuation facilities, such as inadequate water and sanitation facilities, challenges related to overcrowding, privacy and safety, and a lot of concerns as well about keeping children safe and supervised at communal evacuation facilities. We also learned about a common practice of re-evacuation, where people would evacuate and then return home to collect necessary supplies because these weren't available for them at the shelter, such as cooking and food supplies. This reflects a lot of what we found elsewhere in the region, that marginalised groups can be disincentivised to evacuate. We found this as well to be a really strongly gendered issue, with women and other marginalised gender groups being more likely to see the risks of violence or discrimination at a shelter as greater than the risks of not evacuating. This is borne out as well by evidence of higher rates of gender-based violence in shelter settings, as well as a lack of privacy that conflicts with gender norms. These findings led us to a series of practical recommendations for the Smart Flood Early Warning System. The first recommendation is already being taken up because the key thing is to consider gender from the outset so that gendered needs can be incorporated into design and delivery of the system, which is exactly what this project has done. On an ongoing basis, it's vital to ensure that minority voices are being listened to as well as the average. This is what we've done in this study, and it relates to the development of all the early warning system components that we've talked about. For example, when setting up feedback loops, it's important to consider what will be appropriate and accessible for different groups, assessing who might be excluded from a particular platform or mechanism, and ensuring that there are multiple pathways for participation. There's also a clear need to build understanding of flood risks so that people can better interpret forecasts and warnings. This can also tie in with the need to build trust in different forms of communication so that the reliance on in-person warnings doesn't prevent people from having more time to prepare and respond. Additional time for those who need it most can also be provided by considering multiple lead times and linking these to actions that specific vulnerable groups can take. There's also a need to better align the provision of evacuation and shelter support with people's needs, including opening shelters earlier for high priority groups, understanding what provisions are needed, and ensuring that there are sufficient provisions in place. Finally, how can these recommendations be usefully incorporated into policy and practice? We've worked with key stakeholders in the flood early warning system to review the recommendations and identify what actions could be taken by which stakeholders, in which time frame, and with what resources. This was a really collaborative and iterative process, and it was successful because of the willingness and commitment of stakeholders to engage so thoughtfully and constructively, and it's been much more useful and effective than if we had just written up a list of actions ourselves without all of the insight and knowledge that they were able to bring to this step. So, for example, one of our key recommendations was to consider providing warnings at multiple lead times so that vulnerable people who need more time to respond safely can have longer to prepare and take action. The pilot project is looking at providing forecasts for periods of 48 to 72 hours, and following this process, the CDRRMO will look at integrating these forecasts with longer-term forecasting systems, such as Pegasa, to provide earlier warning that will increase in certainty as the lead time decreases. There are loads more examples of really exciting concrete actions that colleagues in this programme have identified and incorporated into their plans. And these will be so instrumental in developing and delivering an early warning system that meets the diverse needs of Baguio's residents and works towards transforming the gender and social inequality that's such a key factor in flood vulnerability and resilience. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. Please do refer to these publications for more detail on what I've talked through today, and please do reach out if you'd like to discuss any of this work further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alison. Unfortunately, she will not be with us for the panel discussion, but since the presentation is more or less related to what was earlier presented also by Ms. Anaban from Baguio City, then perhaps Ms. Tonette later on can also answer the questions related to the presentation of Alison. I guess there are just a couple of highlights that I would like to emphasize here. For the two presentations. First is the importance of data, and the second is the importance of community ownership, raising awareness, experiential knowledge, and preparedness of the community for disaster risk reduction management, and of course the integration of gender equality and social inclusion lens for all disaster risk reduction and management interventions. Okay. So I know you already have some of the burning questions with you there, but we'll just finish our last but not the least presenter this afternoon. We'll be presenting on the use of a digital tool for inclusive data collection in Pontianak and Semarang in Indonesia. So our speaker is Ms. Tiffany Tran, the Human Settlements expert from the Southeast Asia Department of the Asian Development Bank. Tiffany works to advance inclusive, resilient cities through an interdisciplinary lens of urban planning, development economics, and environmental justice. She has advised governments and the private sector clients in Ghana, Vietnam, United States, and more recently Indonesia on design and implementation of urban development policies and projects. Her areas of focus include informality, urban mobility, public space, design, climate resiliency, and local economic development. As mentioned, Tiffany also sent a recorded presentation as she's unable to attend today's session. But joining us live for the panel discussion later on is Rina Wulandari, who is the urban data analyst of the Asian Development Bank. Rina is an Indonesian data analyst with forestry and environmental background. Rina has extensive experience on baseline data mapping, spatial and non-spatial data management, spatial planning, forestry, natural resources management, and RED++ projects. She is currently the urban data consultant for the Asian Development Bank, working on livability profile for two cities in Indonesia, and that is Semarang and Pontianak. So let's hear now the presentation of Tiffany and Rina.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Apologies that I can't be there live, but my talented colleague, Ms. Rina Wulandari, will be there to answer any questions that you might have. So today I want to share a little bit about the digital tools that we're using for inclusive data collection in Indonesia. First, a little bit about the project for some context. The Asian Development Bank has planned infrastructure investments in sanitation services in the cities of Pontianak and Semarang, Indonesia. And to complement these anticipated investments, my team has been tasked with preparing livability profiles for both cities. And that will take the form of an infographic report and a web-based profile. So one of the big tasks has been to conduct a rapid assessment survey of city livability for both cities. And this diagram here represents our working definition of livability. So you can see that we're thinking about it in 4 dimensions, 9 goals, and 25 solutions or policy areas. And what we've done with this framework to operationalize it is that we linked the 25 solutions to each city government's key performance indicators. And then we translated those 25 solutions into survey questions that would assess how the city is performing in each area. The idea is to ask city residents directly about themselves and about the city. The challenge with the rapid assessment survey, though, is how to do it in an inclusive manner. And 3 key questions arose. First, who to survey, where to find these participants, and then how to actually survey them. And when thinking about inclusivity, who to survey is also a question about representation. So are the voices of all types of people in the city represented in the sample survey? And typically this can be done through randomly selecting participants. But the tricky part is that oftentimes there's no publicly available directory of all city residents. So, and then even if we were able to identify who the participants should be, finding them is another question. So how do we direct survey enumerators or people who collect the survey data to the selected participants? Because some city residents might not have a formal address, for example, migrant populations. And then even if we were able to locate the participants, how would we actually collect the data? How would we survey them? Would we use interview methods, non-interview methods? And some city residents might not have digital access. So these were all questions about inclusivity that we considered. And to support us with this challenge, we turned to two digital tools. First, SPADE, Spatial Data Analysis Explorer, developed by ADB, which is an interactive web-based platform that can host geospatial information. And then Kobo Toolbox, which is a suite of tools for field collection of data, specifically in challenging environments, for example, where there's little to no internet connection. So as to the first question, who to survey, we decided to use cluster sampling in multiple stages, which means that we randomly selected in groups. And the group we chose was the Urban Village Administrative Unit. And in this snapshot from SPADE, you can see that we've randomly selected 10 urban villages to be part of this sample. And then in the second stage, we randomly selected from the neighborhood units that make up each of these urban villages. And in the last stage, This is a zoomed in view of one of the urban villages. In the last stage here, we randomly selected from the buildings as a proxy measure for individual residents. So obviously that's not a perfect measure. We did account for differences in population sizes. But anyway, SPADE allowed us to extract the building footprints and then randomize and select from those footprints. So these blue dots here are the randomly selected buildings that we have included in our survey. And the beauty of SPADE is that it didn't only help us identify who to survey, it also helped us find where they are located. And so here, SPADE provided a web-based map for the survey enumerators to navigate to the randomly selected buildings. So you can see in this image, an enumerator is zooming in using the SPADE map, finding her next blue dot or building to go to. In addition to that, SPADE is also offered the flexibility of adding new layers to it. And so here, the orange dots represent the buildings that have already been surveyed. So in this way, we were able to use SPADE to also track and monitor our progress on the survey. And then to our last question on how to survey selected participants, we turned to Kobo Toolbox. We used their web-based survey feature, which allowed us to make a digital survey and then digitally collect and store survey responses within their platform. And we combined this digital survey with an in-person interview method, which allowed the enumerators, one you see in this image here, to include hard to reach populations, for example, those without digital access. And a bonus feature basically for us was that while we were working on the project, the SPADE team actually built a custom plugin for Kobo Toolbox. So that allowed all the responses collected in Kobo Toolbox to be easily uploaded to the SPADE platform. So with the support of SPADE and Kobo Toolbox, I'm happy to report that as of day 20 of our survey, we had not only achieved our target sample size, but we have actually well surpassed it in both cities. So that's it for me for digital tools for inclusive data collection. Thanks very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Tiffany. Before we proceed to our question and answer, I would like to call Rina, who is also involved in this project. If there's anything that you would like to emphasize or stress or add to what has been presented by Tiffany. Rina?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Bing. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Who has joined in this session? Thank you very much. Greetings from Bogor, Indonesia. I think Tiffany's presentation covered the most of the important points in our study related to the support of digital technologies to our survey. I just want to highlight some advantages that we felt after we or when we conducting the survey by combining the social survey, which requires a lot of soft skills to extract information and stories from the respondent, and the digital tools that we use, which is Kobo Toolbox and SPADE maps. The first advantage is, of course, by going digital, we reduce the use of paper. Usually the questionnaires are printed, and so by going digital, we are more environmental friendly. And the second advantage is, since this is a social survey, so the respondents have to feel comfortable, not they don't have to feel like they are being interviewed. So they don't have to fill out anything. The enumerators will do that for them. So the conversation will stay in the casual conversations. And the other advantages is we can see the results in real time because we are working from 4 different time zones. Tiffany is in US and the space map developer, Bon, is based in Philippines, and the rest of the teams in Indonesia. So once the survey result is submitted by the enumerators in the field, we can see directly through the platform. And of course, I know, as mentioned before by Tiffany, the enumerators can plan the most effective route before they plan the survey. Because using SPADE, they know where to go that day, since some areas are quite hard to reach, going to the small alleys and kind of that area.
Okay,
I think that's all.
Okay, thank you, Rina. Thank you. Thank you.
Hand over to you.
Yes, I'm sure there will be other questions later on, but may I kindly request those who wish to ask questions or give reactions to the topics presented earlier to please press the raise hand button to be recognized. Or if you are not comfortable to speak, to please type your questions, reactions, or comments related to the presentations in the chat box. For those who wish to speak, kindly identify also the speaker or the resource persons to whom you would like to direct your questions. Okay, so we now have the first question actually here from May Puen Phu from Myanmar. Can anyone access to use a SPADE tool or just the subscriber? I think this is for you, Rina.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, May Puen, for your question. For the time being, since SPADE tool is designed for handling the geospatial data within ADB projects, so it is still meant for the registered users. So there is administrator based in Manila to manage the person who can view or who can edit. Yeah, so the access is still managed by the administrator at the time. Hope this answer your question.
Hi, Mr. Net. Sorry, Ms. Bing, you're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think that answered the question according to Maypin. Okay, okay. I'd like to give also a couple of minutes to Ms. Tonet. Maybe because due to lack of time, there are things or points that she missed to mention in her earlier presentation. Ms. Tonet?
I actually have touched the whole aspect of the project. However, I just would like to emphasize the importance of real-time data. And we have actually, especially that is one of our challenges. So the difficulty of collaborating with our partner stakeholders and agencies who has this data. So that actually has eaten much of our time, especially that when the consultant came to Baguio for 2 weeks, they were working out everything that connects the flood early warning system to our system. So since with the intervention of our local mayor, we were able to get responses already from these offices, and the importance of having a comprehensive centralized data. That's what we do not have at the city. That if there is this centralized accessible data, it would have been easier for us also to advance this the implementation of this project. And take note that the flood early warning system, the data will not only come from the local government unit, but also to the national agencies, and that we are so dependent. So for the LGU to come up with a centralized and updated data would be easier for us to advance not only this project but also with the projects that that are coming in, because we are already doing an evidence-based planning, and the integration of the inclusivity, we are already integrating this in the project. So very important, really the need for this updated data also.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tonette. Are there any questions out there? I don't see any hands raised unless I miss somebody. Okay. If there's a question, allow me to ask a bit of a question. If I'll just have to push this a little bit further, Ms. Tonette. You mentioned about a lot of the data that are needed are not just coming from the local government, but from the national government agencies. So can you at least tell us how did the city government do this? What kind of, how to say, not tools, but strategy did you use to make sure, or to at least to get the data from the national government? As you know, sometimes there are turfings involved here. So can you at least share a bit of that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, actually, we allowed first the Rumble team to coordinate with them, and we are just on standby to facilitate the request. So after knowing that the request has been ignored for several weeks already, we came in and we formalized the request to be signed by our city mayor. Unfortunately, this request was sent in March, and it was only just recently that that the data request has already been addressed. So very important really that we have to strengthen our connection with all of these with the national agencies and other partner agencies as well, so that it doesn't require us so that it would be easier for us to request for this data. While we also acknowledge that there is also sensitivities of this data, like there is a need for us to have an agreement about the access of this data. This would have been earlier informed to the LGU, so that we should also have prepared for it, rather than after responding late, and that's the time that they only require us to have this agreement to be forged between the LGU and the national agency. And what's more important also that I would like to share is the ownership of this project. So if as you may know, the water stations, water level stations, or the flood early warning equipment is usually operated by the Pag-asa, and that this project will be operated by the local government unit. So this will be the first LGU operated and managed a flood early warning system, and that for us to really focus, or to really maintain this flood early warning equipment, we are actually working with the Pag-asa, that the existing Pag-asa operated flood early warning system would also be transferred to the local government unit, to synchronize also with the flood early warning system that the LGU is operating, and to address also the gap of the skill, the lack of skill in the LGU, since we do not have a hydrologist position. The Rumble team has conducted this on-the-job training, which is comprised of the core group from the local government unit, coming with participants coming from the CDRRMO and other departments. And we also have our peer group with the OJTs coming from the academe, the national agencies like the Pag-asa and the OST. So that during when there is a need for us, if the LGU cannot fully maintain this equipment, then we could always stop their assistance to us, because they have this expertise. So that it would be so that our working relationship with these partner agencies will be smooth, and we can get their assistance as we need them. We are actually coming up with an MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement, so that to set the expectations that the LGU will be getting, or will be the LGU will be the services that the LGU will be getting from them, and the institution also will be aware that they are providing these services to the LGU.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tonet. By the way, I just a footnote because she's been mentioning about PAG-ASA and was the same in the presentation of Alison. PAG-ASA is a Philippine Atmospheric Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration. It's actually like kind of a one in charge of something to do with the weather in the right. Okay. I see hands raised for questions. There being none, I have last question for Rina. Rina, can you tell us more about the data collection itself? Because you first put there in the presentation. So there are 3 challenges actually that you have faced, right? One is who to survey, second is where to find them, and then how to survey them. I think at least these 3 you were able to address with the use of technology. But the people, like when you start surveying them, like when you talk to people, I mean, has there been no, like, don't they refuse? So how did you do this? How did you manage? Were there trainings for your enumerators to make sure that they don't get turned down? Or, those who were surveyed were not offended? Yeah, can you tell us more about, because these are more of people's skills, right? The strategy and how to be able to get information beyond the use of technology, actually.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Yeah, of course, we start with the secondary data. We have some initial data sets that we analyzed prior designing the survey, such as the administrative boundaries that become the basic to conduct the selections of the who to survey. And we have also demographic basic data, such as the population of each administrative units. And from there, we start to do the randomly selected at each cluster sample. So yes, we conduct the 3 days training for our enumerators. We have 11 enumerators in each city. So there's quite a lot, and in that training, we include the research ethics and how to mitigate some possibilities, as you mentioned, that there will be a reluctant or refuse, the potential participants will refuse them, and we include in the training how to deal with those kind of things, including if the target point falls within, let's say, the inappropriate is not a house, for example. So we also set up how to find the replacement on the field. Because sometimes even we already use the smallest unit, which is building footprints. There was also a possibility that it is not 100% correct in the field. So yeah, there is a protocol that they have to make before they choose the replacement for those points.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, there should really be a protocol because this involves actually, even if you have the technology, you're using like a mobile or an iPad to collect the data and to send it somewhere else. The face-to-face with the people asking, have to ask questions is still it's very important. Anyway, I think we are sorry. Yes, go ahead, Rina, please.
Last point. And they also when they also try to get the really targeted before they move to another selection. So if the respondent is, for example, they don't want to be interviewed at the time, so the enumerator will ask, can we come back another time, for example? So maybe there are some possibilities why the respondents is not permit the enumerators to interview.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rina. Thank you, Ms. Tonet. We will now proceed to our guided discussion. And for this, we are going to use the Mentimeter for participants to answer the questions, okay? So we have actually 3 questions. And as with before, kindly log in to either you scan the QR code or log into menti.com and enter the code. So our first question would be, what are the biggest challenges that your city faces in improving resilience and ensuring that marginalized and vulnerable groups are not left behind? Okay, the link to the Mentimeter.com is also posted in the chat box. So for those who have difficulty scanning the QR code, you can click the link at the chat box. Okay, we have to answer here. Okay, 3. Funding. Okay, both a limited fund or funding, the lack of or limited fund, of course, lack of updated, maybe it's data, no? The updated data. And then floods and crimes, resources. Resources can be funding, can be manpower, capacity, availability of centralized database. We cannot overemphasize that. Hard to reach locations, that is true. Okay, crime, yeah, when you take failure to turn plans into realities. Wow, seems like I think I can relate to this in my country, huh? Traffic congestions, flooding, of course, funding. Funding is also, there's never enough funds all the time. We have so many needs, but we only have so much resources to spend. Okay. Limit of data for study. That's true. This is very important. Social issues, that includes crime, as mentioned earlier. Are there other biggest challenges? Implementation of plans related to the other one that was mentioned earlier. It entails skills, how to engage the vulnerable and marginalized. They are generally reluctant. Yeah, maybe they have been afraid or they have a bad experience in the past. They're not confident to engage, or they have this feeling of being overlooked for quite a while. Political intervention, wow, big words, yes. Political intervention could be a positive and can be a negative thing. And maybe here, because it's a challenge, then it could be a capacity. Yeah, the lack of or the limited capacity of people that will be implementing, or the people that are involved. Okay, so there are quite a few ideas that we have here. Now let's proceed to the second question. Using the same link and the same code, please answer the second question. What smart city tools or technology for data collection and planning does your city uses to improve resilience and social inclusion? Yeah, what tools? Doesn't have to be digital. It can be digital, it need not be digital. Okay, some would use GIS or ArcGIS for mapping. I think this is quite common for city governments. Kubo toolboxes for surveys. Other technology. Only 3? How about the use of course, survey? Yes. How about the use of drone? I don't know how to use that, but they said that you can actually use that now. Interviews, right? Online surveys, great. Sensors. Okay, GIS. GIS is more common, I guess, these days, huh, for mapping. City system develop. Can I what is that other one? Earth observation. Okay. Activity outreach. Okay. So when you say city systems develop, this is actually a homegrown, or this is like the city government developing its own database using its own technology? Activity outreach. May I ask who answered activity outreach? Can I just ask the person to kindly expound on that a little bit? We'd like to learn more about how that is being done. May I know who the participant is? Would you kindly raise your hand and expound on your answer, please? I mean, I'm sure a lot of participants here are keen to know what you mean by this and how can they use this also. Would that be possible? I cannot see if the person is raising the hands, but Earth observation, satellite imagery, yeah. CCTV, yeah, that's good for crime prevention. Okay, so can we take this down now for a while? So, okay, Rina, you're raising your hand. Would you like to say something? Maybe it was you who answered that. The activity outreach. Would you like to expound on that?
No, I'm sorry. No, I just want
No,
to,
okay, sorry.
add it. I mean, this is not in my city, but we have experience to implement. If you ever heard the tools named Yourscape, which was developed by the Future Cities Laboratories, we are there are several cities in Indonesia already trained and use Yourscape to help the government, the local government, to refocus the problems and the marginalized or vulnerable community in the city. So it's a good tool also.
Rina, what was the name of the tool? Sorry, the internet was erratic when you were speaking.
Yourscape.
Yourscape.
Scape, yeah.
How do you spell
Urban
that?
rural scape. It's
Urban rural.
Yes.
And then
Scape.
Scape. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So is this available? Is this off the shelf? How is this available?
It is open source, and the project was also funded by ADB. Back since 2017, we implemented in Palembang and Semarang, Bandung, and Makassar. So yeah, I thought the question was what implement in your city.
Yeah.
So, I haven't answered anything, but I just want to share that it is also a good tool to support the inclusivities and resilience planning in the city.
Okay, thank you, Rina. So Ida here actually put in the chat that for those who are interested, you can the link is here. Please copy this and you can check this later on. I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If there are available technology out there that is free, that is you know, we don't have to spend anything. It's just to learn about it. Then I think that would be good, right? Okay, now let's go to the third and the last question for the Mentimeter. Okay, so the third question would be something related to the second one, which is what are some of the obstacles your city encountered in using these smart city tools for data collection? planning, and policy making. Okay. So same as before, by this time you are already familiar with the Mentimeter. Our answers already. Availability of the data, capability of the user, funds, connectivity issues. Okay, are there more? So connectivity, something to do with the internet, funds, yeah, we have been mentioning this. Capability of the user, something to do with ability on how to use the technology. Availability of the, are you talking about availability of data or availability of the technology itself? Okay, financial assistance. Okay, I think there are three phases here that we're asking. The first is for the data collection. And for the data collection, I think, yeah, the answers is like connectivity issues. We cannot do this, we cannot do that because we don't have the funds, we don't have the technical know-how. How about in terms of application of the data that you have collected, or the use of the data that you have collected? Is there any obstacles or anything that you have encountered there, like it's not relevant or it's not reliable? And also policy making, is this being questioned by your principals, by your leaders? Like, do they believe in the kind of data or in the reliability of the data, in the integrity of the data that you get? These are some of the things that normally we encounter, right? So here we more or less have like the technical know-how, availability, capability of the user, funds for the government system, connectivity issue, financial assistance, again, capability of the user or the manpower. Are there any other issues related to the planning, related to the use of the data already? I think this is all that we have now. Okay, so thank you very much all for participating in our Mentimeter discussion. Is there anything else you would like to expand? Anybody who would like to discuss his or her answer a while ago in the Mentimeter? The room is now open. For those who would like to say something, or if you're shy, you can just put your questions or reaction in the chat box. Going? Gone? Okay, there being none. So I think this ends session 3. And maybe let me just go through my final reflections for this 1.5-hour session. Based on what has been presented and some of your answers there. But the first is, I think the availability, we cannot underestimate the availability of accurate and updated data in a timely fashion, and that is also accessible to facilitate better planning and to reduce vulnerabilities of the marginalized communities residing in high-risk areas. So we've been saying data. We need data, yes, but it has to be accurate, it has to be updated, and it has to be, well, first accurate, updated, timely, and accessible. I think those are the keywords when we talk about data.
Do finish up.
Okay. The second is the use of digital technology helps improve data collection, which can facilitate identification and inclusion of populations that are otherwise may be left behind or might be underrepresented in planning and in designing appropriate and effective interventions, especially in the context of disaster risk reduction and management. The third, which was not able to highlight quite well, but is actually the impact of disaster. This is not something to do with the impact of disaster, that it is not gender neutral and it is not selective of economic status. And therefore, those who are marginalized are more vulnerable as they will likely suffer the negative impact of the disaster. Identifying them early on, raising awareness, as has been put by Alison, and knowledge helps the government provide timely and effective interventions and lessen the vulnerability of the marginalized groups. So those are my reflections for today. For those who would like to add more, you've been so silent. Feel free to add more of your reflections if you have. Are there? Otherwise, I think we've come to the end of our session. And so let me just go through a few of the housekeeping reminders again. You can help us improve our future events by answering our evaluation survey at the end of the event. So we have here the QR code and also the link. And certificates of participation will be emailed to you after a week after the event, especially for government officials who's been with us here. And so I think this is very valuable for them, being away from their work for a couple of hours. Okay, for more information about the ASEAN Australian Smart Cities Trust Fund, we have the Facebook, we are in Twitter, we have the YouTube channel and link. And so we would like to see you at the closing session. Thank you very much for participating, and mabuhay po kayong lahat mula sa Pilipinas. Bing Banoan po. Thank you.